Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. Happier cows produce more milk. Simply calling a cow by its name increases milk production by 3.5%. Studies on animal behavior have shown that when cows receive more individualized treatment and less stress, their well-being improves. That condition reduces hormones related to stress and favors physiological processes that increase milk production. Wisdom teeth are gradually disappearing. Currently, 35% of people are born without these teeth, which can become a major annoyance. Scientists believe this is due to evolutionary changes in the human diet and in the size of the jaw, which today is usually smaller than that of our ancestors. Researchers in Tokyo are developing nanocrystal technology capable of carrying molecules that kill cancer cells. With this nano-robot therapy, it will be possible to operate on a person without opening them. These tiny systems can be designed to travel through the bloodstream and release medication directly into a tumor, which could reduce damage to healthy tissue and improve the effectiveness of cancer treatments. There are no vegetarian snakes. They feed exclusively on other animals. All known species are carnivorous and hunt prey such as rodents, birds, eggs, fish, or even other snakes. Some kill their prey using venom, while others, such as boas and pythons, immobilize them through constriction. Some areas in Scotland and Japan changed the color of street lighting to blue and realized that the change made crime decrease. And it also looks great. Blue light is believed to produce a calming effect, different from white or yellow lighting. Although the studies are not conclusive, several cities tested this type of lighting in train stations and streets. According to mathematicians, there are 177,147 ways to tie a necktie, and you do not even know one. This number was calculated by researchers who analyzed all possible combinations of movements when tying a tie. The famous Windsor knot is only one among thousands, although most people always use the same one out of habit. 12% of all Coca-Cola in the world is consumed at breakfast. Very healthy. In many countries, the drink is consumed in the morning as a companion to food or even as a substitute for coffee. The enormous global consumption of the brand means that even small daily habits represent gigantic quantities of bottles. Humans and elephants are the only animals with a chin. In humans, the chin is a bony protrusion on the lower jaw that does not clearly appear in other primates. Elephants show a similar structure on the front of their lower jaw that resembles a chin, something uncommon among mammals. Chimpanzees in West Africa have entered their own Stone Age. They have begun using stone tools for several generations. For example, they use rocks as hammers and anvils to break hard nuts, and researchers believe that some of these tool traditions have been culturally transmitted among groups for hundreds of years. Neanderthals and humans coexisted for thousands of years before they went extinct. Both species lived at the same time in parts of Europe and Asia, and genetic evidence shows that interbreeding even occurred between them. That is why many people today, especially outside Africa, still retain a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. Beans, corn, cauliflower, cabbage, and milk are the 5 foods most likely to cause flatulence. This happens because they contain sugars or fibers that the human digestive system cannot always break down completely. When these compounds reach the large intestine, bacteria ferment them and produce gases as part of the digestive process. The boiling point of human saliva is 3 times higher than that of normal water. This is because saliva is not just water, but a complex mixture that contains enzymes, proteins, mineral salts, and other compounds that alter its physical properties. These components influence the way the liquid responds to heat compared with pure water. Uranium, an element that was discovered in 1789, was named after the planet Uranus, which had also been discovered recently. The German chemist Martin Heinrich Klaproth identified this element while analyzing a mineral called pitchblende and decided to name it in honor of the planet discovered a few years earlier by the astronomer William Herschel. The obesity problem of the population in recent years has caused the average size of crematory ovens to increase in order to accommodate larger coffins. Some funeral homes have had to adapt their facilities and equipment to handle wider and heavier caskets, reflecting physical changes in the population in different parts of the world. Your nails grow at a speed of approximately 0.04 nanometers per second. This equals roughly a few fractions of an inch per month, although the speed can vary depending on each person's age, diet, and health. In general, fingernails grow faster than toenails and tend to grow even faster on the fingers that are used most often. Doritos can be made without the powder and achieve the same flavor. However, they are still made that way because the residue it leaves on your fingers is part of the Doritos experience, according to them. The brand has even mentioned in advertising campaigns that licking the powder from your fingers is part of the product's appeal, something that reinforces its identity within the snack market. Scientists still have not found an exact reason why we need to sleep and why we can die from lack of sleep. Although it is known that sleep helps consolidate memory, repair tissues, and regulate brain functions, there is still no single explanation that fully justifies it. Experiments with animals have shown that total sleep deprivation can cause severe metabolic failures and eventually death. Lightning can strike you even when you are inside your house. The discharge can travel through the telephone line cable or the electrical system. It can also spread through metal pipes or building structures, which is why during a thunderstorm it is recommended to avoid using wired telephones, showering, or touching devices connected directly to the electrical grid. At the height of the fame of the dog Rin Tin Tin, a chef prepared him a daily steak lunch and classical music was played to help his digestion. This German Shepherd became one of the first great animal stars of Hollywood during the 1920s, starred in numerous movies, and helped the Warner Brothers studio remain financially stable in its early years. The stuffed dodo birds that exist are not real. They are made with feathers and parts of other birds by taxidermists. They are only representations. The only dodo that is preserved today with tissues is at the Natural History Museum of the University of Oxford, and it is not on display. The fermented shark, hakarl, a popular food of Iceland, was eaten more for survival than for pleasure. This species of shark is toxic in its fresh state due to its high content of urea and ammonia. In order to eat it, it must be prepared by fermenting it for months buried and then more months in the open air. Today, it is only prepared out of tradition. 27% of all the content of the universe is dark matter, which does not interact with light and barely interacts with ordinary matter. It is passing through us right now. Even so, it is believed to be what keeps planets, stars, and galaxies together, like a kind of gravitational stellar glue. You only need 39 digits of pi to calculate the circumference of the observable universe with a margin of error smaller than the diameter of a hydrogen atom. In 2007, the studio Imaji Animation Studios made some test scenes for a digital animated Zelda movie, but Nintendo did not approve its development. That studio was responsible for the movies Astro Boy and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it closed its doors in 2010. Haley Joel Osment, the child who says, "I see dead people" in The Sixth Sense, made his film debut as the son of Forrest Gump. In the 1994 movie, he plays Little Forrest Gump Jr., the son of Tom Hanks's character. Years later, he achieved worldwide fame with The Sixth Sense in 1999, a role for which he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor when he was only 11 years old. Kenny Baker, the man who was inside R2-D2 in the Star Wars trilogy, hated Anthony Daniels, the actor who played C-3PO. He called him the most ill-mannered man I have ever met. According to Baker, the relationship between the two actors was tense during filming, and they hardly spoke outside of scenes, even though their characters appear together constantly in the movies. According to astronauts, moon dust smells like gunpowder. Although in space there is no air to perceive smells, astronauts noticed the scent when they returned to the lunar module after walking on the surface. The dust stuck to their suits and, once inside the cabin, released a smell similar to burned gunpowder or hot metal. The Bell AZ 75710 is the largest truck with the greatest load capacity currently in production in the world. It can carry up to almost 500 tons of cargo and stands more than 26 feet tall, so its drivers must climb up a ladder. It has two engines with 2,300 horsepower each and is used in mines to transport earth. The name of Edward Norton's character in Fight Club is never mentioned in the movie. Throughout the story, other characters simply call him narrator, since the plot unfolds from his point of view and through his voiceover. In the original 1996 novel written by Chuck Palahniuk, exactly the same thing happens, reinforcing the idea that the character represents an anonymous identity within modern society. Headphones can be used as microphones and vice versa. Basically, they are the same thing, although you will not get the same quality, of course. Both devices work thanks to a small diaphragm that vibrates with sound. In headphones, that vibration turns into sound waves, while in a microphone, the opposite process happens, and it becomes an electrical signal. In 1958, Ford designed a car called the Ford Nucleon, which was expected to have a miniature nuclear reactor in the back to generate its energy. The developers of the game Fallout were inspired by this concept for the vehicles that appear in the acclaimed series. The platypus, besides being one of the most unusual animals, has one of the most painful stings for humans. They have a spur that is like a spine on their back legs that contains venom, which, when it comes into contact, causes swelling and discomfort that can last for weeks. Sylvester Stallone became so poor that he had to sell his dog for $50. A week later, he managed to sell the script for Rocky and went back to buy his dog for $3,000. It seems he was not very good at business. The dog was named Butkus and had been his companion during the hardest years. He even appears in the first Rocky movie as the protagonist's pet, a small, real detail that became immortalized in film history. Tyrannosaurus rex were so heavy that if they tripped, they could die from the impact. Their little arms would not help them at all if they tried to cushion the fall. It is estimated that an adult could weigh between about 13,000 and 20,000 pounds, so a strong fall would have placed enormous pressure on its bones and organs. For that reason, many paleontologists believe these animals probably moved with some caution to avoid serious injuries. A Norwegian boy escaped from a wolf by playing a song by the band Megadeth on his cell phone. The boy was walking through the forest when the animal came too close. To scare it away, he played music at full volume from his phone, and the unexpected noise made the wolf retreat so the boy could return home safely. If a beam of light is traveling inside water and tries to exit into the air at a steep angle, it will not be able to escape. It bounces back inward. This can be observed by pointing a laser at a stream of water. It looks as if the water carries the laser, when in reality, it is just bouncing around inside. This is the same principle behind fiber optic cables through which internet data travels. A History of Violence was the last movie to be released on VHS in 2005. By that time, the format was already practically dead, replaced by DVD and soon after by Blu-ray. For decades, VHS tapes dominated the home market from the late 1970s to the early 2000s, when the transition to digital formats became inevitable. Throughout history, 2 wars have begun because someone threw someone else out of a window in Prague. These events are known as the Defenestrations of Prague and occurred in 1419 and in 1618. In particular, the second one triggered the start of the 30 Years' War, one of the most devastating conflicts in 17th century Europe. Rats can compress themselves to enter a hole only about 3/4 of an inch wide, making it almost impossible to have a building completely free of rats. Their skeleton is very flexible, and if their head can pass through an opening, the rest of the body can almost always pass through as well. They also have very strong incisors, capable of gnawing through wood, plastic, and even some metals. Since 2004, the Oxford Dictionary chooses every year a word that marked the world, among which have been Sudoku, brain rot, toxic, and selfie. But in 2015, they broke with tradition by designating as the word of the year the LOL emoji, or face with tears of joy or laughter. After that one, and until now, they have not chosen another emoji as word of the year. Luxo Jr. was the first film produced by Pixar in 1986. It was the first short film made entirely with digital animation to be nominated for an Academy Award. The short shows 2 desk lamps playing with a ball and lasts only a couple of minutes. Its success was so great that the Luxo lamp became Pixar's official logo and appears at the beginning of almost all of its movies. Water is 9% less heavy when it is frozen. This happens because when ice forms, the molecules arrange themselves in a more open crystalline structure, which increases the volume and reduces its density. Thanks to this property, ice floats on liquid water, something that is vital for life in lakes and oceans during winter. The 10 most venomous snake species in the world live in Australia. Among them are the inland taipan, considered the most venomous snake on the planet, and several extremely potent sea snakes. However, despite hosting so many dangerous species, Australia records relatively few deaths each year thanks to quick access to antivenoms and strict emergency medical systems. If the Andromeda Galaxy were brighter, its size would be more than 4 times that of the Moon if we observed it from the Earth. Although it is 2.5 million light-years away, Its size of 140,000 light-years makes it stand out. But since its luminosity is not constant, in reality, we can only see the nucleus without using telescopes. The Breakfast Club was going to have sequels every 10 years where the club would reunite, but the plans fell apart because Judd Nelson and John Hughes hated each other. The idea was to show how the characters had changed over time and how they faced adult life. However, personal and professional conflicts prevented the project from moving forward. There are more than 10,000 beaches in Australia, and on each one, there must be a different creepy animal. It is Australia. The country is famous for its enormous biodiversity and for hosting several of the most venomous species in the world, including box jellyfish, sea snakes, sharks, and highly toxic spiders that are part of its natural ecosystems. Seahorses are the only fish with a neck. Unlike most fish, their head is tilted and separated from the body by a flexible area that allows them to move it up and down. This particular shape also helps them quickly suck in small crustaceans when feeding. The movie Pulp Fiction exists partly thanks to the actor Danny DeVito, who, although he did not act in the film, was one of the executive producers through the production company Jersey Films that he had founded and that was dedicated to seeking unusual projects. The script by Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery was considered risky by several studios, but the company helped finance it and secure support for its production. The movie ended up winning the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and became an enormous cultural success. Originally, the time machine in Back to the Future was going to be a refrigerator. The writers changed the idea because they feared children might try to climb into one after seeing the movie. They ultimately chose the DeLorean, a car with gull-wing doors that became one of the most recognizable vehicles in cinema. Samuel L. Jackson insisted on using a purple lightsaber in Star Wars. It was one of his conditions for accepting the role of Mace Windu. The actor personally asked George Lucas for a different color so that his character could be easily distinguished in battle scenes, especially during large fights with mini Jedi. The name of the country, Mali, means hippopotamus in the native language of that place. The name comes from the ancient Mali Empire, a powerful civilization of West Africa that flourished between the 13th and 16th centuries. In some interpretations of the Manding language, Mali is related to the word hippopotamus, an animal associated with strength and power. Many discontinued LEGO sets have increased their value at a rate between 10 and 11% annually in recent decades, and when compared with gold, they have had a better return on investment. The reason for their value is that many sets are removed from the market and become scarce, so some collectors are willing to pay significant amounts. However, this is only true for some sets and should not be considered a real investment. Gravity cost more than India's Mars exploration program. The film by Alfonso Cuarón, released in 2013, had a budget close to $100 million. In comparison, India's Mars orbiter mission cost around $74 million and successfully placed a probe into Martian orbit on its first attempt. While filming the terrible movie Super Mario Bros., Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, who played Mario and Luigi, were so depressed by how the filming was turning out that they sometimes arrived drunk to film their scenes. Ants can survive inside a running microwave oven. They are small enough to avoid the radiation, but that does not mean you should put ants in the microwave. Do not do it. The reason the Olympic Games are held every 4 years comes from Greek tradition. The 4-year cycle, called the Olympiad, was enough time for athletes to prepare, for spectators to arrive, and for it to align with other events of that time. When the modern games began, the 4-year period was maintained. All the scenes that take place inside the Matrix in the movie of the same name have a green filter. This was done to make it look like everything was happening inside a computer screen. In contrast, the scenes in the real world were filmed with bluish and gray tones to visually differentiate both worlds. The card of the famous mobster Al Capone said that he was a used furniture salesman. During the Prohibition era in the United States, Capone maintained a facade of legitimate businesses to justify his wealth, while in reality, he ran a huge network of alcohol smuggling, illegal gambling, and other criminal activities. John Travolta turned down the lead role in the movie Forrest Gump. Later, he regretted his decision. The role was eventually played by Tom Hanks, who won the Academy Award for Best Actor for that performance in 1995. The film became a huge box office success and one of the most remembered classics of cinema. In Japan, it is considered good luck if a sumo wrestler makes your baby cry. This belief is part of an ancient festival called Nakizumo, in which wrestlers hold babies and try to make them cry, since, according to tradition, loud crying drives away evil spirits and helps the child grow up healthy and strong. After Switzerland, the place with the most gold reserves per capita in the world is Lebanon. Much of that gold was accumulated over decades as financial backing for the country. The reserves are stored in the central bank and in vaults abroad, and for years they have been considered an important guarantee for Lebanon's economic stability. $250 million were spent promoting Star Wars: The Force Awakens, $50 million more than it cost to make the movie. The campaign included partnerships with numerous brands, international events, toys, advertisements, and promotional products that helped turn the release into one of the biggest film launches in history. Scientists concluded that the famous African gray parrot Alex had the intelligence of a 5-year-old human. He had a vocabulary of 150 words and could ask for fruits by name. He would get angry when he did not receive what he asked for. He could also identify colors, shapes, and quantities, and even understand concepts such as bigger, smaller, or the same, something very uncommon in animals. Finland has more heavy metal bands per capita than any other country in the world. The genre is extremely popular in the country and is a visible part of its musical culture, with festivals, specialized radio stations, and frequent concerts. Some music schools even offer classes related to this style, and several Finnish bands have achieved international fame within the metal scene. The core of the sun is so hot that a piece of sun core the size of a pinhead would be enough to kill a person standing about 100 miles away. At the center of the sun, temperatures exceed 15 million degrees. At that extreme temperature, matter exists in a plasma state and releases an enormous amount of energy. NASA is developing three-dimensional printed pizzas for astronauts. The idea is to create food layer by layer using ingredients in cartridges, which would allow long-lasting meals with controlled nutrients to be prepared during extended space missions. This type of technology could also be useful for future trips to Mars, where storing fresh food would be much more complicated. In 2011, the number of web pages reached 13 billion. That is one page for every year since the Big Bang. The comparison became popular because the universe is approximately 13,800,000,000 years old. Since then, the number of websites and web pages has continued to grow enormously. In 1979, Japan offered the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Margaret Thatcher, 20 female karate practitioners for her protection during an economic summit. The offer was rejected. The proposal was part of the security team prepared for the international meeting in Tokyo, but the British government decided to maintain its own diplomatic protection system. Before becoming famous, Katy Perry released a Christian rock album under her real name, Katie Hudson, when she was 16 years old. It sold fewer than 200 copies. She was also a backing singer for the band POD. In Thailand, there is a special language that is used only when speaking to the king. In reality, it is an honorific register of the Thai language known as royal language, which uses different vocabulary and expressions to refer to the monarch and the royal family, reflecting the deep cultural respect that exists toward the institution. Wi-Fi was developed using technology employed in a failed experiment to detect mini black holes. Part of the technological foundation came from methods created by radio astronomers to analyze weak signals from space. Australian researchers adapted those signal processing techniques to improve wireless data transmission. During a period in the 1990s, 50% of all CDs produced in the world were the free samples that America Online handed out on the street. The company mailed discs, gave them away in magazines, and distributed them in supermarkets to attract new users to its internet service. It is estimated that over the years, billions of these promotional discs were distributed. Vincent van Gogh sold only one painting during his lifetime, The Red Vineyard. The painting is currently in the Pushkin Museum in Russia. It was purchased at an exhibition in Brussels in 1890 by the artist Anna Buch. After his death, his works began to gain recognition, and today they are among the most valuable in modern art. Kangaroos cannot jump if their tail is not touching the ground. The tail works as an essential support and counterbalance for their movement. When they move slowly, they use the tail as if it were a third leg that helps propel them together with their front and back legs. Bubble wrap was first produced in a garage in New Jersey in 1957 when inventors were trying to make textured wallpaper. Engineers Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavan glued two shower curtains together, creating air pockets between them. Although the wallpaper did not work, they later discovered that the material was perfect for protecting fragile objects during transport. Sean Connery turned down the role of Gandalf in the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. He said that although he read the book and the script, he did not understand anything at all. According to reports, the offer included a percentage of the profits from the movies, which could have meant hundreds of millions of dollars. The role was ultimately played by Ian McKellen and became one of the most memorable characters of the saga. Martha Stewart ended her relationship with Anthony Hopkins after seeing him in the movie The Silence of the Lambs. She said in an interview that after seeing Hopkins' performance as Hannibal Lecter, she could not stop associating him with that character. The performance was so intense that it was impossible for her to see him the same way. All humans were, at some point, a single cell, at least for about half an hour. That moment occurs just after fertilization, when the egg and the sperm merge to form a single cell called a zygote. From there, a process of rapid cell division begins that, within a matter of days, produces hundreds and then thousands of cells that will form the embryo. A study showed that people believe one energy drink is better and more effective than another after drinking it simply because the price is higher, even though they contain exactly the same ingredients. Cats do not understand punishment. To train them, they should be rewarded and praised when they behave well. Or maybe they do understand it, but make us believe they do not, so that we treat them well, and little by little, they gain more power until they dominate the world. In the pre-medieval period, the word legendary emerged, meaning things chosen to be read. At that time, reading and writing were uncommon, so all written things existed because they were truly important. The word comes from the Latin legenda, meaning things that must be read, and it was used especially for stories about the lives of saints that were read in monasteries or during religious celebrations. Over time, the term began to be associated with extraordinary or memorable stories. The "I'm feeling lucky" feature in the Google search engine allows users to skip the results page and go directly to the first website that appears in the search. Because it avoids displaying the advertisements on that page, it was estimated in 2007 that the button cost Google around $110 million per year in lost advertising revenue. At that time, it was calculated that approximately 1% of searches used this option. A polar bear can eat the equivalent of what 86 penguins eat. These large Arctic predators require enormous amounts of energy to survive in extreme climates, so they can consume dozens of pounds of meat in a single meal. In the wild, their main prey is seals, which provide the fat needed to maintain their body temperature. The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has several dogs as pets. Once he brought one to a meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel to bother her, knowing that she is afraid of dogs because one bit her when she was a child. The Pokemon Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are based on Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, respectively. Their English names make direct reference to these martial artists. Hitmonlee refers to Bruce Lee, and Hitmonchan refers to Jackie Chan. Both Pokemon appeared from the first generation of the series and represent different fighting styles, one focused on kicks and the other inspired by boxing. In 20% of all car accidents in Sweden, deer are involved. This is because the country has a very large population of moose and deer that often cross roads, especially in forested areas. During autumn, the risk increases because it is mating season, and the animals move around more, which has led to the installation of thousands of warning signs on the roads. No one reached the summit of Mount Everest in 2015. This had not happened since 1974. That year, a strong avalanche caused by an earthquake in Nepal forced the cancellation of the climbing season and required the evacuation of many mountaineers from base camp, making the season one of the most tragic in the mountain's history. 8 of the 88 elements that occur naturally on the planet were discovered in the same mine in Sweden. It is the Ytterby mine, near Stockholm, famous in the history of chemistry. Several rare earth elements come from there, such as yttrium, ytterbium, terbium, and erbium, whose names even derive from the place itself. In 2005, Kate Winslet joked that acting in a movie about the Holocaust guaranteed winning an Oscar. 4 years later, she won her first and only Oscar for her role in The Reader, a movie that dealt with that very subject. In the International Mathematical Olympiad, there have only been 2 recorded cases of competitors cheating. On both occasions, they turned out to be contestants from North Korea. In both cases, the students were disqualified after judges detected that their solutions matched material that had been leaked before the exam, which led to stricter reviews of the competition security process. A microwave oven consumes the same amount of energy running its digital clock as it does heating food. This is because the clock stays on all the time, while the magnetron runs only a few minutes a day. In many models, the clock, control circuits, and display consume electricity continuously throughout the entire year. So that small, constant use can end up adding up to energy consumption similar to several minutes of daily cooking. Planet Earth has lost 40% of its wildlife over the last 40 years, according to the Worldwide Fund for Nature. This estimate comes from the Living Planet Index, which analyzes thousands of vertebrate populations and shows how habitat loss, hunting, and climate change have drastically reduced many species. There is at least 10 times more crime on television than in real life. Various studies on television programming have shown that crimes appear much more frequently in series and news programs than in real statistics. This overexposure can influence public perception, making many people believe that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. The statue of Nikola Tesla in Silicon Valley provides free Wi-Fi for people nearby. The monument is located in the city of Palo Alto and was funded in part by donations on the internet. In addition to offering public wireless connection, inside the base of the statue there is also a time capsule with objects and messages that are planned to be opened in several decades. Lady Gaga wrote the song Born This Way in only 10 minutes. The singer has said in interviews that the main idea and basic structure of the song came very quickly while she was working in the studio. Later, as usually happens in music production, the song was refined with arrangements, recordings, and production until it became the single that topped charts in several countries. Trains in Japan are so punctual that even if they arrive 5 minutes late, the staff must apologize to the passengers. When a train is an hour late or more, the apology even appears in the news. Railway companies also provide delay certificates, so passengers can justify arriving late to work or school. All accessible bathrooms in the United Kingdom use the same key, and all disabled people in that country have a copy of that key. The system is known as the radar key, and it is used to control access to thousands of adapted restrooms in public spaces. The idea is to prevent misuse of these facilities and ensure that they are available when people with disabilities actually need them. There are more barrels of bourbon whiskey aging than people in Kentucky, United States. This happens because the law requires bourbon to be aged in new, charred oak barrels for several years. The distilleries of the state store millions of barrels in large wooden warehouses, where the climate and the passage of time help develop the drink's characteristic flavor. There is a waterfall called the Devil's Kettle that flows into a hole, and it has still not been discovered where all that water goes. Crocodiles cannot stick out their tongues to show their displeasure towards someone, but they do not worry about it because they solve everything by talking like people. In reality, their tongue is fixed to the bottom of the mouth by a membrane that prevents it from moving freely, an adaptation that helps keep water from entering the throat when they hunt underwater. There is a town called OK in Oklahoma, United States. On maps, it reads, OK, OK. The small town is located near the Arkansas River and has a small population. Its curious name often draws attention because it looks more like a confirmation written on the map than the name of a place. In 2004, Volvo presented a prototype called Volvo YCC that was designed by women for women. It had no hood, and the bumpers were resistant to scratches. The model also included solutions intended to reduce maintenance, such as a system that automatically notified when the car needed to be taken in for service, and more practical compartments inside the vehicle. The flag of Nepal is so complicated that the constitution of that country includes a 24-step guide on how to create it. It is the only national flag in the world that does not have a rectangular shape, and it is composed of 2 overlapping triangles that represent the Himalaya Mountains and 2 traditional celestial symbols of the country. Only 12 rats enter Alberta, Canada each year, and they are quickly exterminated by pest control before they can leave offspring. Alberta is the largest rat-free region in the world. Since the 1950s, the government has maintained a very strict border surveillance program to detect and eliminate any rodent that tries to establish itself. Eminem suffered so much bullying in school that his mother sued the institution for failing to protect her son. The case was filed after the rapper, whose real name is Marshall Mathers, suffered an assault that caused a concussion and left him unconscious for several days. Although the lawsuit was unsuccessful, the episode was later mentioned in interviews and in some of his songs. Venus rotates in the opposite direction of all the other planets in the solar system. This phenomenon is known as retrograde rotation and means that the planet spins in the opposite direction of most other planets. As a result, on Venus, the sun appears to rise in the west and set in the east. In 2013, a bank employee in Germany fell asleep on his keyboard pressing the number 2. He accidentally transferred 222,222,222 euros in a transaction that should only have been 62 euros. The largest frog in the world is larger than the smallest antelope in the world. The African Goliath frog can measure more than 11 inches and weigh more than approximately 6.5 pounds. The smallest antelope is the dik-dik, which, although taller, weighs only a few kilograms, making the two animals surprisingly comparable in size. Lemons are a mixture of oranges and grapefruits created by humans thousands and thousands of years ago. Genetic studies indicate that the modern lemon emerged from the cross between the bitter orange and the citron, another ancient citrus fruit cultivated in Asia. Over time, farmers spread this fruit throughout the Mediterranean and later across the rest of the world. Nail polish contains nitrocellulose, a low-power explosive, along with other toxic compounds. Nitrocellulose is also used in lacquers, paints, and formerly in photographic film. In nail polish, it forms a hard and shiny layer when it dries. It is usually mixed with solvents and plasticizers that allow the product to spread easily over the nail. Lego rejected the offer from the White Stripes to make a cross-promotion for the music video Fell in Love with a Girl. When they saw that it was a hit, Lego changed its mind, but the counteroffer was rejected. In 1969, the brand Honeywell launched the H316, the first home computer. It cost more than $10,000. In reality, it was a simplified version of an industrial mini-computer and did not have a monitor or keyboard like modern ones. Users entered instructions through switches and lights on the front panel. The United States is currently in the longest period without a president dying during his term. The last time it happened was with John F. Kennedy in 1963. Since then, several decades have passed without a presidential death in office, something notable in a country whose history includes several assassinations and deaths from illness while leaders were still serving. Only 35% of the followers on Twitter of an average person are human. The rest are evil robots. Many of those automated profiles are accounts designed for advertising, link distribution, or automatic content generation, which has led platforms to develop systems to detect and remove bots. The American magnate J.P. Morgan once offered $100,000 to the person who could tell him why his face was so red. No one could solve the mystery. Over time, it is believed that the most probable cause was rosacea, a chronic skin condition that causes visible redness on the face, and that at that time was poorly understood by medicine. Beavers have transparent eyelids so they can see underwater with their eyes closed. In reality, they possess a special membrane called the nictitating membrane that acts like a kind of third eyelid. This translucent layer protects their eyes while they swim and allows them to keep partially seeing underwater while they search for branches or build their dams. Niccolò Paganini, considered one of the greatest violin virtuosos, was so good that many people believed he was the son of the devil or that he had sold his soul. At one point, he even had to show letters written by his mother to prove that he had human parents. Jessica Alba spent a year training in martial arts, gymnastics, and motorcycle riding for her role in the series Dark Angel. The series premiered in 2000 and was created by James Cameron. Alba played a genetically modified soldier, so much of the training was aimed at performing action scenes convincingly. Jonas Salk refused to patent the polio vaccine he developed, losing millions but helping millions of people. When he was asked who owned the patent, he responded with a famous phrase, that the vaccine belonged to the people. Thanks to that decision, the vaccine could be produced massively in different countries and helped drastically reduce a disease that had caused major epidemics. The shortest war ever recorded was between Great Britain and Zanzibar on August 27, 1896. Zanzibar surrendered after only 38 minutes. The conflict began when a new sultan took power without British approval. The empire's fleet bombarded the royal palace, and the resistance ended almost immediately. It has been observed that dolphins can communicate by telephone, and it seems that they know what they are talking about. In some scientific experiments, it has been seen that when two pools are connected through an underwater audio system, The dolphins produce whistles and specific sounds that appear to respond to those of the other individual, as if they were maintaining a conversation at a distance. In Cologne, Germany, it is common to donate used Christmas trees to the local zoo. An elephant can eat up to 3 of them a day and can also use them to clean its teeth. The keepers also use them as environmental enrichment for other animals, since the trunks and branches can be used for playing, scratching, or exploring. On average, 2 newborn babies are given to the wrong parents every day. Although today it is much less common thanks to identification systems such as electronic bracelets, footprints, and coded tags, in the past, these mistakes happened more frequently due to confusion in maternity wards of very busy hospitals. All living things can be anesthetized, even plants. Although anesthesia has been used since the 19th century, it is still not completely understood how it works. Experiments have shown that certain anesthetic substances can temporarily cause plants to stop responding to stimuli, such as closing their leaves or moving toward light, and they recover their activity when the effect disappears. In New York City, there are more than 2,000 pizzerias and thousands of restaurants that sell pizza, which makes it one of the cities with the greatest concentration of pizza in the world. It is estimated that New Yorkers consume more than 1 million slices every day, and New York-style pizza is characterized by its thin, flexible crust that is easy to fold. The bottom of classic Converse shoes has felt, so they can be classified as slippers and therefore have lower import taxes. A small layer of soft material on the sole allows them to legally not be considered completely athletic shoes. This design detail was added for commercial reasons related to customs regulations. Ivory Coast and Ghana produce almost 70% of all the cocoa in the world. This makes it a very fragile industry. Any variation in harvests can cause the prices of this ingredient, used mainly to make chocolate, to fluctuate. Ecuador, Brazil, Cameroon, and Nigeria also produce it to a lesser extent. Min-sik Choi had to eat 4 live octopuses to film the famous scene in Old Boy. The actor, who is Buddhist, had to go pray immediately afterward to redeem himself. The scene was repeated several times to get the correct take, which turned that moment into one of the most shocking and talked about scenes in South Korean cinema. The Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah, has the largest collection of Rolls-Royce automobiles. He has 150. In addition, he has another 2,000 luxury cars. His collection is part of a gigantic royal garage that, according to various estimates, exceeds 5,000 vehicles in total and includes unique models made especially for the royal family. When Michael Jackson was planning his comeback in 2007, he wanted to build a giant robotic replica of himself in Las Vegas that would wander through the desert and shoot lasers from its eyes to attract the attention of tourists. Canon produced fewer than 20 units of the EF 1200mm lens in the early 1990s, a telephoto lens used for very specific things such as nature photography from very far away or sports. They cost around $120,000, and because they weighed so much, about 37 pounds, they required an industrial tripod. At no point is the word mafia mentioned in the movie The Godfather. This is because the real mafia asked that it be that way. During production, representatives of the Italian-American Civil Rights League pressured the studio to avoid the use of certain terms. In the end, it was decided to use expressions like family or the organization instead of the word mafia. Paraskevi decatriophobia is the fear of Friday the 13th. The term comes from Greek. Paraskevi means Friday, decatres means 13, and phobia means fear. This superstition is widespread in several Western countries and has led some buildings to omit the 13th floor or for some people to avoid traveling or carrying out important activities on that date. The owner of the domain Windows2000.com was named Bob, and Microsoft happened to own Bob.com. They reached an agreement to exchange the web addresses. The site Windows 2000 was owned by a designer named Bob Kirstein, and when Microsoft launched its operating system, Windows 2000, they negotiated the domain exchange to avoid legal conflicts. Helium does very strange things at low temperatures. It does not solidify at normal pressure, and when it reaches a temperature close to absolute zero, it enters a state called superfluid and begins to have behaviors that seem to defy physics, since it flows without friction, can climb the walls of a container and escape, and can leak through cracks only a few molecules thick. The Dark Knight made more money in its first 6 days in theaters than Batman Begins made in total. The enormous success of the film in 2008 was partly due to the huge public expectation and Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, which became one of the most memorable performances in modern cinema. The longest hug lasted 5,000 years. Archaeologists found a pair of skeletons embracing in northern Italy. It is believed that the couple lived during the Neolithic period. The discovery occurred near the city of Mantua, and researchers nicknamed them the Lovers of Valdato. Both were buried facing each other with their arms intertwined, which turned the discovery into one of the most famous prehistoric burials. For every human on Earth, there are 1,500,000,000 insects. Sweet dreams. Insects represent most of the animal biodiversity on the planet and live in practically every ecosystem. Their enormous numbers are due to their rapid reproduction, small size, and great capacity to adapt to different environments. The vampire squirrel is a species of squirrel that lives in the forests of Borneo, the third largest island in the world, shared by Brunei, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Its name comes from stories told by local hunters about attacks on deer and chickens. But in reality, it is only a bad reputation, since it has been documented that its diet mainly includes seeds, fruits, and sometimes insects. In the first Spider-Man movie in 2002, the spider that bit Peter Parker was a real spider similar to a Black Widow. It was anesthetized and painted red and blue to film the scene. The effects team used several takes to capture the exact moment when the arachnid walked across the actor's hand. Later, digital details were added to make it appear like a genetically modified species. If you turn a shark upside down, it will enter a state of paralysis for up to 15 minutes. But do not try this at home in case you have a shark in your house. This phenomenon is called tonic immobility and causes the animal to become temporarily disoriented. Some scientists use this state to study sharks more safely in marine research. Because of the long take style in the movie Birdman, Edward Norton and Michael Keaton entertained themselves by counting how many times the other actors made mistakes, forcing the scene to be repeated. Emma Stone made the most mistakes. Zach Galifianakis made the fewest, and when he did make mistakes, he sometimes improvised to avoid stopping the scene. The Digswell Viaduct, inaugurated in 1850 in England, is considered a great railway achievement of the Victorian era. It has more than 13 million bricks made with the same clay that was excavated at its own construction site, which also helped reduce costs and contributed to its uniform appearance. This structure is not the one that appears in the Harry Potter movies. That one is in Scotland. Neither Ian McKellen nor Patrick Stewart knew how to play chess when they filmed X-Men. Despite that they had to record several scenes in front of the board portraying Magneto and Professor Xavier as if they were experienced players. During filming, they received basic guidance on how to move the pieces naturally, although the final result relied more on acting than on real strategy. Despite being one of the most successful games of all time, Mortal Kombat only had a team of 4 developers. The original game was created by a small group at Midway Games that included programmers, artists, and designers working together. Despite their limited resources, they managed to create a title that revolutionized fighting games and became a cultural phenomenon. In the Netherlands, 8 prisons were closed because of a lack of criminals. We can send them some, do not worry. The decline in crime, together with reforms in the justice system, caused several prisons to become practically empty. Some of these facilities have even been used to house prisoners from other European countries. The novel True History by Lucian of Samosata is considered the very first work of science fiction. It was written in the 2nd century and contains things such as explorers flying to the moon, encounters with aliens, and interplanetary wars. It is called that because it was written as a satire of other novels of the time. Apollo 13, Armageddon, and Around the World in 80 Days are among the movies carried on board the International Space Station. Astronauts usually bring a small digital library with movies, series, and music for their free time. Many have space or adventure themes, and sometimes they are watched together during rest periods to help maintain morale during missions that can last several months. The first traffic light used gas lighting and had to be lit manually each time the light changed. It was located outside the Parliament of London. Unfortunately, it exploded and injured the police officer who operated it. It was installed in 1868 and was inspired by the railway signals of the time, with mechanical arms during the day and red and green lights at night. After the explosion, the system was removed, and several decades passed before electric traffic lights began to be used. In 2004, A bottle of wine costing only $2 defeated 2,300 other wines in an international competition. The wine was from the Australian brand known as $2 Chuck, sold in supermarkets at a very low price. The result surprised many experts and showed that price does not always determine perceived quality in a blind tasting. The viral Dubai chocolate trend has caused a shortage and price increases in pistachios worldwide, with more than 30% growth in a year. The supply chain for this food is narrow. Most of the production comes from a few countries, such as Iran, Turkey, and the United States, and it can vary considerably depending on the climate. Samuel L. Jackson was perfect for the character of Nick Fury in The Avengers because in the comics, that character is actually based on him. In Marvel's Ultimate comic line, published in the early 2000s, the artists redesigned the character with the appearance of the actor himself. They even included a reference where Fury mentions that he would like to be played by Samuel L. Jackson in a movie. Carrie Fisher did not wear underwear in Star Wars because George Lucas convinced her by arguing that in a galaxy far, far away, no one wore underwear. Approximately 8 million gallons of clean water had to be dumped from a reservoir in Portland, Oregon, United States, in 2011 because a drunk person decided to urinate in it. Authorities chose to empty the reservoir as a sanitary precaution, although several experts pointed out that the amount of water was so large that the contamination would have been minimal. The movie Metropolis, which came out in 1927, imagines a dystopian future set in 2026 filled with technology, giant cities, and robots. But ironically, it also portrays a deeply divided society, with lower-class people working in underground places while high society lives in luxury. A pineapple can take up to 2 years to grow. The plant first produces a rosette of leaves for many months before forming the fruit in the center. After flowering, the fruit needs around 6 months to fully mature, which makes pineapple cultivation relatively slow compared with other tropical fruits. A man in Great Britain changed his name to Tim Price just to make it difficult for telemarketers to pronounce. The idea was that when hearing his name, the operators would get confused or give up continuing the call. The case became popular in British media as a curious example of the many strategies some people use to avoid telemarketing. The Maya used to launch nests of killer wasps at their enemies with catapults during war. It was a primitive form of biological weapon. Warriors collected nests of very aggressive wasps or bees and hurled them toward rival troops during battles. The chaos caused by the enraged insects could disorganize the enemy and make an attack easier. There is a photograph taken with the daguerreotype technique in 1840, where supposedly the wife of the composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Constanze Mozart, appears on the far left at 78 years of age. It was verified and published by the German newspaper Der Spiegel, although some Mozart scholars have denied that it is actually her. Toy Story 2 was originally going to be released directly to video, but Pixar considered the script so good that it was released in theaters. During production, the project was almost completely reworked in less than a year, forcing the team to work intensely. The result exceeded all expectations, and the movie ended up becoming one of the biggest animated hits of 1999. Libyan rebels found in the house of the dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, an album full of photos of Condoleezza Rice. According to reports at the time, the Libyan leader had publicly expressed admiration for the then United States Secretary of State, whom he called his beloved African black woman. The discovery attracted much attention during the looting after the fall of the regime. In a town in Germany called Fuggerei, the rent has not increased since the year 1520. It can cost only $1 to live there for an entire year. Pack your bags. This small neighborhood in the city of Augsburg was founded by the Fugger family as housing for people with limited resources. Residents pay a symbolic annual rent and must follow certain community rules. Among the unusual items you can buy in some Costco stores are giant teddy bears, caviar, pianos, coffins, hot tubs, and even 24-karat gold bars. These bars are usually sold in 1-ounce pieces produced by certified refineries, and when they appear in the company's online store, they often sell out within a few hours due to high demand from investors and collectors. The strange trombone-like sound in Inception is based on a slowed-down version of a song by Edith Piaf. The idea is that the same song would sound like that in the background when a person is dreaming. Composer Hans Zimmer took the song Non, je ne regrette rien and stretched and digitally distorted it until turning it into that deep sound that repeats throughout the entire movie. 29 days after the sinking of the Titanic, a movie about the events was made that included the participation of a real survivor of the disaster. The film was titled Saved from the Titanic and starred Dorothy Gibson, an actress who had truly escaped the tragedy. The movie premiered in 1912 and recreated her experience on board, although today it is considered a lost film. Rhubarb, a plant that is used in different dishes, grows so fast that it can be heard when it redistributes its internal pressure, producing strange sounds. This is more noticeable when accelerated growing methods such as dark greenhouses and heat are used. A rat can survive longer without drinking water than a camel. This is because rats can obtain much of the water they need from the food they eat, and they have very efficient kidneys that conserve fluids. Thanks to these adaptations, they can survive long periods in dry environments without drinking water directly. When he died in 1891, John Davy was the only person who spoke Cornish. He had kept the language alive because he spoke it to his cat. Cornish was a Celtic language spoken in Cornwall in the southwest of England and had been disappearing for centuries due to the dominance of English. At the beginning of the 20th century, a revitalization movement began that allowed the language to have speakers again and programs to teach it. In one episode of the Disney animated series Hercules, Aladdin, Jasmine, and the genie appear as guests in an episode set in Greece, where they arrive asking for help against a villain. Almost nobody remembers this because Disney did not treat it as something important. It was simply another episode where, by the way, they completely ignored the chronology of the stories that are supposed to be separated by centuries. When Charles Chaplin received his honorary Oscar, he received a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in the history of these awards. The tribute took place in 1972, when Chaplin returned to the United States after decades living in Europe. For years, he had been practically banned in Hollywood because of political controversies, so the recognition was seen as a historic reconciliation. Polar bear hairs are transparent and not white. Their skin is black to absorb as much heat from the sun as possible. The white appearance of their fur is due to each hollow hair scattering light, which allows them to camouflage perfectly in the snow and ice of the Arctic while retaining body heat more efficiently. In the oceans, there are giant bioluminescent creatures similar to worms. They are believed to be able to reach the size of a blue whale. In many cases, they are colonies of organisms called siphonophores, which are actually made up of thousands of individuals that function as a single organism. Some have been observed glowing in the darkness of the ocean and reaching extraordinary lengths. In the movie Birds of Prey, there is a scene in which Harley Quinn moves around on roller skates, and to film it, Margot Robbie had to train with specialists in artistic roller skating. Although she already had previous experience, thanks to her preparation for I, Tonya, where she appeared skating on ice, she had to learn new technical fundamentals because it is not the same. The bedroom in The Exorcist was kept refrigerated at temperatures below freezing, so cold that one day when they arrived on set, it was covered in snow. Director William Friedkin wanted the actor's breath to appear naturally on camera. To achieve this, they installed large refrigeration systems that cooled the room for hours before each scene. Some twins can create their own language to communicate with each other. This is known as cryptophasia. It usually appears when children spend a lot of time together and develop simplified or modified forms of language that only they understand. In most cases, it disappears as they grow up and begin interacting more with other people. William Herschel, the discoverer of Uranus, lived to the age of 84, the same number of years it takes Uranus to complete its orbit around the Sun. Herschel discovered the planet in 1781 using a telescope he had built himself, expanding the number of known planets for the first time since antiquity. There is a structure that resembles a giant igloo in Alaska that has been abandoned since its construction in the 1970s. It was going to be a hotel called Igloo City, but since it did not comply with construction regulations, it was never used, although there are currently plans to convert it into a warehouse or a distillery. Arnold Schwarzenegger was paid approximately $21,000 per word for his role in Terminator 2. The actor speaks very few lines during the movie, but his physical presence and distinctive style were key to the character. His famous line, "Hasta la vista, baby," became one of the most remembered quotes in action film history. 1 out of every 20 people has an extra pair of ribs. This condition is known as a cervical rib and appears in the upper part of the rib cage near the neck. In many cases, it does not cause problems, and the person may not even know they have it, although in some people it can compress nerves or blood vessels. Misophonia is the terror and anger caused by hearing the sound of people eating. People who suffer from it can experience intense irritation when hearing repetitive noises such as chewing, slurping, or typing. Although its origin is still being studied, some research suggests that it is related to a particular way the brain processes sound. The author of The Witcher, Andrzej Sapkowski, sold the rights to his work to CD Projekt Red to make a video game for only $9,500. He even rejected receiving a percentage of the profits because he believed the game would not succeed. After the success of The Witcher 3, he sought additional compensation, reaching a new agreement that was not publicly discussed. When the budget ran out during the filming of Mad Max, the original 1979 movie, director George Miller offered his own vehicle for one of the crash scenes. That is dedication. The production was so limited that many cars used in the film belonged to members of the film crew or to friends of the production. In 1970, a thief was captured in Zurich, Switzerland, when he forgot his finger at the crime scene after accidentally cutting it on glass. The finger was used by the police to identify his fingerprints. Anthophobia is the fear of flowers. Although it may seem strange, some people experience real anxiety when seeing or being near flowers, especially in large quantities. Like other specific phobias, it may be related to previous negative experiences or psychological associations that trigger fear responses. Lasagna was not born in Italy. It is actually a Greek pasta invention that was originally called laganon. Later, the Romans brought it to what is now Italy, where it was prepared from the 13th and 14th centuries with the detail that it did not include tomato, since it had not yet arrived from America. Modern lasagna was prepared until the 18th century. Before the 1960 movie Psycho was filmed, Alfred Hitchcock bought all the existing copies of the book so that no one would know the ending of the story. He also asked theaters not to allow people to enter after the movie had started, something very unusual at that time. Baobab trees can store up to approximately 32,000 gallons of water in their trunk. They do this to survive droughts. Their trunks are thick and spongy, which allows them to absorb and store large amounts of water during the rainy season. Thanks to this adaptation, they can survive long periods without rainfall, and some specimens can live more than 1,000 years in the arid regions of Africa. Babies exposed to sign language imitate it and remain silent even though they may be able to speak. Studies have shown that some babies can learn to communicate through gestures before fully developing speech. This allows them to express simple needs while their verbal language is still developing. When Outkast released its single Hey Ya, one of the lines repeated several times in the song said, "Polaroid picture, shake it like a Polaroid picture." Polaroid released an official statement saying that shaking this brand's instant photos can damage them. There is a dwarf planet beyond the orbit of Neptune called Haumea. Its rotation is so fast that it has the shape of an ellipsoid. Basically, it is an egg-shaped planet. It completes one rotation on its axis in less than 4 hours, an extraordinary speed for an object of its size. It also has 2 small moons and a thin ring system discovered by astronomers in 2017. Your digestive system will process approximately 50 tons of food during your lifetime. This complex system includes organs such as the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and the liver, which work together to break down food, absorb nutrients, and eliminate waste necessary to keep the body functioning. Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, the presidents of the United States and the Soviet Union respectively in the 1980s, informally agreed to help each other and act together if an extraterrestrial invasion occurred on Earth. When a jump by the skydiver Joan Murray failed, she hit the ground at a speed of about 80 miles per hour on top of a nest of fire ants. The shock she felt from being stung more than 200 times by the insects released the adrenaline needed for her heart to keep beating and save her life. And you say you have had a bad day? Most Muppets are left-handed because the puppeteers use their dominant hand to control the mouth and the other hand to control the arms. Since many puppeteers are right-handed, they insert that hand inside the character's head to move the mouth precisely. The other hand controls one of the arms using rods or gloves. Although lately Beijing, China has been widely talked about because of its pollution, in reality, the most polluted city in the world is New Delhi, India. Various studies on air quality have indicated that the Indian capital often records extremely high levels of fine particulate matter in suspension, especially during certain times of the year when traffic, industry, and agricultural burning in nearby regions combine. San Marino has 8 times more doctors per person than any other country in the world. This small country surrounded by Italy has a very extensive healthcare system relative to its population, which is only a few tens of thousands of inhabitants. That is why the ratio of doctors per person is extraordinarily high. In 2017, Norway became the first country in the world to begin shutting down national FM radio stations in order to replace them with digital radio in the DAB+ format. The process began on January 11, 2017, and was carried out gradually by regions during that year, making the country the first to almost completely abandon FM radio at a national level. Mount Everest, the highest mountain on the planet, grows every year because the Indian subcontinent is pushing into China. Why can't we all just get along? In reality, the Indian tectonic plate continues moving slowly northward and presses against the Eurasian plate. That geological collision lifts the Himalaya mountain range a few millimeters each year, although erosion also reduces part of that growth. Only one of the 20 most common surnames in Sweden does not end in son, and it is Lindberg. This happens because for centuries, patronymic surnames were very common, formed from the father's name plus the ending son, which means son of. That is why names such as Andersson, Johansson, or Carlson still dominate a large portion of the country's records. Not sweeping the leaves that naturally fall from trees in autumn greatly helps make the soil fertile. As they decompose, the leaves turn into organic matter that enriches the soil and feeds microorganisms and insects. This natural process returns nutrients to the earth and improves the soil's ability to retain moisture. Because of the famous Y2K virus, a computer charged a customer $91,000 for returning a movie he had rented 100 years later. He did not have to pay them. Instead, the store offered him a free rental because of the error. The problem occurred because some systems recorded years with only 2 digits, which caused incorrect calculations in dates and payments when the year changed from 1999 to 2000. There are at least 38 places called Springfield in the United States, but the Springfield of The Simpsons is based on Springfield, Oregon. The creator of the series, Matt Groening, grew up in the nearby city of Portland and took many details from that area for the show. He also chose the name Springfield because it is very common and allows many people to imagine that the town could be their own. A toaster uses almost half the energy of a normal-size oven. This happens because the space that needs to be heated is much smaller and the heat is concentrated directly on the bread. For that reason, small kitchen appliances are often more efficient when preparing small portions of food. A bacterium that lives in mealworms can transform plastic into biodegradable waste. Goodbye pollution. Scientific research has shown that certain microorganisms present in the intestines of these worms can break down materials such as polystyrene. Scientists study this process because it could help develop new biological ways to recycle plastics that are difficult to degrade. Police in Japan shoot orange paint at cars they are chasing so that other patrol units can identify them and help. This type of marker allows the vehicle to be located more easily if it manages to escape from the scene. The paint used is usually visible and difficult to remove quickly, which makes it easier for other units or cameras to detect it later. Rhinoceroses can run faster than a human, but weigh about the same as a pickup truck. And since you asked, yes, they communicate by smelling the droppings of other rhinos to stay with the correct herd. These animals can reach speeds close to 31 miles per hour, despite weighing more than approximately 4,400 pounds. They also use piles of dung called middens, where different rhinos leave chemical signals that indicate territory, identity, and reproductive status. After Marilyn Monroe died, her former husband, the baseball player Joe DiMaggio, was so devastated that he brought roses to her grave 3 times a week for 20 years. He never remarried, and his final words were, "At last, I will be able to see Marilyn again." In Japan, a person's blood type is treated in a way similar to zodiac signs. Being asked what blood type you are is very common, and there are even horoscope-like descriptions for each variation. This idea became popular in the 20th century, and many people believe that types A, B, O, or AB reflect personality traits. Although it is widely known culturally, there is no scientific evidence supporting that relationship. The rhythm of the Mission Impossible theme is actually the letters MI in Morse code. The composer Lalo Schifrin used the pattern of dots and dashes corresponding to those letters to construct the famous irregular rhythm of the melody. That rhythmic detail helped make the theme immediately recognizable and one of the most famous television pieces of music in history. The most common last name in the world is Chen. It is especially common in China and in Chinese communities around the planet. Because of the enormous size of the Chinese population, last names such as Chen, Li, or Wang are among the most widespread in the world and can be shared by tens of millions of people. In Uganda, a country in Africa, 50% of the population is under 15 years of age. This is because the country has one of the highest birth rates in the world, which produces an extremely young population compared with most countries. Steve Jobs was half Syrian. His biological father, Abdul Fattah Jandali, was born in Syria and came to the United States as a university student. Jobs was given up for adoption shortly after he was born and grew up in California with Paul and Clara Jobs, who raised him and supported his interests in electronics and technology from a very young age. In reality, Frankenstein is the mad doctor, and the monster is simply known as the monster, although some people do not know this. The character was created by Mary Shelley in the novel published in 1818. In the story, Victor Frankenstein is the scientist who brings the creature to life, but over time, popular culture began using his surname to refer to the monster as well. Koala fingerprints are almost identical to human fingerprints. They have even interfered with crime scene investigations. So now you know, if you are a criminal, you should bring a koala as an accomplice. Even under a microscope, they can be very difficult to distinguish from human ones because they show very similar patterns of arches, loops, and whorls. Rats cannot vomit. This happens because their digestive system and the structure of their esophagus and stomach prevent them from performing the vomiting reflex. For this reason, scientists often use them in studies about poisons and toxins, since they cannot easily expel the substances they ingest. Elephants know to approach humans when they are looking for help if they are injured or sick. They can find humans even over very large distances. Cases have been documented in Africa and Asia where elephants approach villages or ranger stations when they have wounds, traps, or thorns embedded in them. Their great memory and ability to recognize people allow them to remember where they can find help. With the help of a licking machine, it was discovered that, on average, it takes 364 licks to reach the center of a Tootsie Pop. It is true. The experiment was carried out by engineering students from Purdue University, who built a device that imitated the movement of a tongue in order to obtain a more consistent result than a human test. The yellow part of an egg is not the future chicken. It is food for the embryo. That part is called the yolk and contains fats, proteins, and vitamins that nourish the embryo while it develops inside the egg. The future chick forms from a small spot on the surface of the yolk called the germinal disc. The author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, chose the uncommon name Hermione for the wizard's companion so that not many girls with that name would be teased for being nerdy or overly studious. The name comes from Greek mythology and ancient literary characters, and with the success of the saga, it ended up becoming much more widely known in different countries. Bacteria and amoebas are so different from each other that an amoeba is more similar to a person than to a bacterium. This is because amoebas, like humans, belong to the group of eukaryotes, organisms whose cells have a nucleus and complex internal structures. Bacteria, on the other hand, are prokaryotes and lack these cellular structures. Beethoven always dipped his head in cold water before composing music. The composer believed that this habit stimulated his mind and helped him concentrate. He had many peculiar routines related to his creative process, such as counting exactly 60 coffee beans to prepare each cup he drank while working. The 1996 movie Twister was the first to be released on DVD. The format officially debuted that same year and promised better image quality, interactive menus, and additional material. Over time, the DVD almost completely replaced VHS and became the main home movie format for more than a decade. There are more than 10 million bricks in the Empire State Building. The building, completed in 1931, was constructed in the surprisingly short time of just over a year and became the tallest skyscraper in the world for decades. In addition to the millions of bricks, enormous amounts of steel and limestone were also used to build this famous New York structure. In Sudan, there are more pyramids than in Egypt. Most are located in the ancient region of Nubia and were built by the kings of the Kingdom of Kush more than 2,000 years ago. Although they are smaller than the Egyptian ones, there are more than 200 in Sudan, especially in archaeological sites such as Meroe and Nuri. Marie Curie's notebook is still radioactive. Anyone who wishes to see it must sign a document assuming the risks. Her notebooks and documents were exposed for years to the radium and polonium that she herself investigated, so they continue emitting radiation. For this reason, they are kept inside special lead-lined boxes at the National Library of France. There are currently 32 closed-circuit cameras within approximately 656 feet around the apartment where George Orwell had the idea for the acclaimed novel 1984. The irony is often mentioned because the work describes a society where everyone is constantly watched by Big Brother. In 1838, a 14-year-old boy entered Buckingham Palace disguised as a chimney cleaner and reached the Queen's bedroom. He took her underwear before fleeing. The incident was part of a series of intrusions carried out by a young man named Edward Jones, known as the Boy Jones, who managed to enter the royal residence several times before finally being arrested. In the United States, only 5% of the world's population lives there, but it has 25% of the entire prison population. This statistic is often mentioned in debates about criminal policies and justice systems. For decades, the country has maintained one of the highest incarceration rates on the planet. Nelly Furtado once turned down $500,000 to pose in Playboy with clothes on. The proposal consisted of an elegant and non-explicit photo session, but the singer decided to reject it because she wanted her career to remain focused on music and not on her image. During those years, her popularity was rising thanks to international hits that dominated radio and music television. The King of Hearts is the only king in the deck that does not have a mustache. In most traditional card designs, this character appears clean-shaven, unlike the other kings. He is also usually shown with a sword behind his head, which is why he is sometimes nicknamed the Suicide King in the English deck. Woody Allen has written all his scripts using the same manual typewriter. For decades, he has preferred to work with an old Olympia typewriter that he has kept since the early years of his career. Despite technological advances, the director has said in interviews that he feels more comfortable writing in this traditional way. The first space shuttle was going to be called Constitution, but after thousands of letters from Star Trek fans, the name was changed to Enterprise, like the famous ship from the television series. President Gerald Ford approved the change in 1976, and the shuttle was publicly unveiled with several actors from the series present. The first person with the mutation for blue eyes had brown eyes and probably never saw anyone with blue eyes, since it takes two people with that mutation for someone to be born with that distinctive eye color. 90% of the calories we burn are used to maintain body temperature. A good way to lose weight is to expose yourself to the cold. But please do not go climb into the refrigerator. The body constantly spends energy to keep its internal temperature stable, and when the environment is cold, it must work harder to preserve heat, activating metabolic processes that consume more energy. All the internet weighs the same as a large strawberry. This curiosity is based on a physical estimate of the weight of the electrons that store information in the world's servers. Although the amount of data is enormous, the total mass associated with those electrons would be extremely small, comparable to that of a strawberry. In an average household in Japan, more than 10 hours of television are watched per day. Japanese television. Do not try to understand it. Just love it. Many programs include extravagant contests, strange physical challenges, and very exaggerated visual humor. This particular style has attracted international attention for years, and several formats have been adapted in other countries. Highlighters are usually yellow because they do not leave a gray shadow when a photocopy is made. The fluorescent tone reflects a lot of light and allows the text to remain readable when copying documents. That is why this color became the standard when these markers began to become popular in offices and schools. An eagle can kill a baby deer and carry it away while flying. The largest eagles, such as the golden eagle, have incredible strength in their talons and can hunt prey relatively large compared with their size. Even so, they usually attack young, small, or weakened animals because carrying too much weight in flight is very difficult. Socks are among the items most needed in shelters, but they are among the least donated by people. This happens because many people tend to donate used clothing, while shelters usually need new socks for hygiene reasons. Keeping feet dry and protected also helps prevent infections and skin problems. In the Norwegian army, there is a penguin that holds the rank of colonel-in-chief. It is a king penguin at the Edinburgh Zoo named Niels Olav. The tradition began in the 1970s, when the Norwegian Royal Guard adopted the bird as their official mascot. Over the years, it has been symbolically promoted several times and participates in military ceremonies. If the price per square foot of that area is taken into account, Central Park in Manhattan is worth more than all of Alaska. This is because it is surrounded by some of the most expensive real estate in the world, in one of the urban areas with the highest property values on the planet. Alaska, on the other hand, has a gigantic territory, but vast remote regions with low commercial value. After Leonardo da Vinci died, King Francis I of France hung the Mona Lisa in his bathroom. The painter spent his final years in France under the protection of the monarch, who acquired several of his works. Over time, the painting became part of the French royal collection, and centuries later, it would end up in the Louvre Museum, where today it is one of the most visited artworks in the world. Barbara in Latin means strange woman. The word comes from the Greek term barbaros, which was used to describe people who did not speak Greek and whose language sounded incomprehensible to them. Over time, the name Barbara became popular as a female-given name in many European cultures. An average woman uses her own weight in lipstick every 5 years. The phrase is used as a curious exaggeration to illustrate how much cosmetic product can be consumed over time. Although the exact figure can vary greatly depending on each person's habits, it reflects how such a small object can accumulate surprising use over the years. Despite having more than 1 billion inhabitants, in China there are only about 200 surnames. This is because many family names have been passed down for thousands of years, and a large portion of the population shares the same ones. In fact, surnames such as Wang, Li, and Zhang are among the most common on the planet, and each one is used by tens of millions of people. An average horse can produce up to 15 horsepower. The term horsepower was originally defined in the 18th century to compare the power of steam engines with the strength of real horses. Interestingly, a horse under maximum effort can generate much more than 1 horsepower for brief periods. A convict in France escaped from prison using oranges painted like grenades, and his wife helped him escape by picking him up with a helicopter after learning how to pilot it. Three-dimensional printing is a technology that has existed for 30 years and has only recently become popular because the patents have expired or are about to expire. The first three-dimensional printing systems appeared in the 1980s. When several key patents began to expire, more companies and hobbyists were able to develop their own printers. Rhinoceroses communicate using their droppings. Do not ask how. In reality, they create piles of dung called middens that they use as signaling points. The smell transmits information about territory, reproductive status, and the identity of the individual, allowing other rhinos to know who passed by even days later. Jessica Alba's crying in Fantastic Four did not look very convincing, according to director Tim Story. He said it would be better to add it later using computers. During filming, the director felt that the scene was not working as expected and chose to use digital effects to improve the tears in the final shot, something that is not unusual in modern film productions. Bird feathers generally weigh twice as much as their bones. Although their bones are hollow and very light to facilitate flight, feathers cover much of the body and represent a considerable proportion of their total weight. They also serve important functions such as thermal insulation, flight, and display during courtship. Around the world, there are more Subway restaurants than McDonald's. For several years, the sandwich chain maintained the largest number of locations globally thanks to its franchise model of smaller stores and lower initial investment. This allowed it to expand quickly in shopping centers, gas stations, and airports in dozens of countries. In an intelligence test, an incentive of $10 caused the average results to increase by 20 IQ points. The experiment showed that motivation can greatly influence performance on these tests. When participants knew they could receive a financial reward, they tended to try harder and solve more problems correctly. The largest prime number discovered so far has more than 24 million digits. It was found in 2018 by the project Great Internet Mersenne Prime Search, a network of thousands of computers that work 24 hours a day searching for increasingly larger prime numbers. Andy Warhol used to go to hair salons to have his wig trimmed. After a month, he would return with a longer wig and act as if his hair had grown. The artist was famous for his sense of humor and for constantly playing with his own public image, something that fit perfectly with his artistic style and his interest in celebrity culture. In a study conducted in 2008, 58% of British teenagers stated that Sherlock Holmes was a real person, while 20% thought Winston Churchill was fictional. Holmes was created by Arthur Conan Doyle in the late 19th century, but the popularity of the stories was so great that even today, many people send letters to the detective's supposed address on Baker Street in London. A teenager from Malawi named William Kamkwamba learned how to build a windmill from scrap to generate electricity in his village. Later, he built a larger one to bring water. He learned all of this from books he read in the local library. Hurricanes rotate in different directions depending on which side of the equator they are on. In the northern hemisphere, they rotate counterclockwise, while in the southern hemisphere, they rotate clockwise. This happens because of the Coriolis effect, which influences the movement of large masses of air on the planet. The national anthem of Spain has no official lyrics. The Royal March is one of the oldest national anthems in the world and has been used since the 18th century. Over time, several lyrics have been proposed, but none has been officially adopted, so normally only the music is performed during ceremonies and sporting events. When Albert Einstein was asked what the speed of sound was, he said he did not store that information in his brain because it could easily be found in books. With this response, he wanted to illustrate his idea that the mind should be reserved for understanding concepts and solving problems, not for memorizing data that could be easily consulted. Only 3 places in the world have changed from driving on the right side to driving on the left side, which are East Timor, Okinawa, and Samoa. These changes usually occur for political or historical reasons, such as the influence of neighboring countries or former colonial administrations. In Samoa, for example, the change was made in 2009 to make it easier to import vehicles from Australia and New Zealand. There are more than 50,000 edible plants in the world. However, only 3 seeds, rice, wheat, and corn, make up 60% of all the plants we eat. These 3 agricultural bases support much of human food consumption and also livestock production, which means many modern diets depend heavily on very few crops. The national anthem of Greece has 158 verses, but normally only 2 are sung. The anthem is based on the poem Hymn to Liberty, written in the 19th century by Dionysios Solomos. It is one of the longest national anthems in the world, although in official ceremonies, only the first verse is performed. A cow can produce up to 200,000 glasses of milk during its lifetime. This depends on factors such as breed, diet, and living conditions. Modern dairy cows can produce several thousand gallons of milk per year, and many remain in production for several years, especially on farms where their diet, health, and lactation cycles are carefully managed. Cars, despite being Pixar's least good movie, is the most successful franchise from the studio. It has generated more than $10 billion in sales, counting only merchandise. Much of the success comes from toys, clothing, and children's products inspired by characters like Lightning McQueen and Mater, which are very popular with kids. In the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway, there are more than 20,000 marijuana seeds, so this plant will be able to survive the apocalypse. This vault, built inside a mountain in the Arctic, functions as a global backup to preserve seeds of important crops and protect the genetic diversity of plants from natural disasters or global crises. The bite of a tiger shark is capable of breaking the hard shell of a turtle, but that does not mean they enjoy doing it. This shark has very strong serrated teeth and one of the most powerful bites among fish. Its diet is extremely varied and includes fish, turtles, seabirds, and other animals. Iceland used to be the only country in the world where there were no mosquitoes. However, in October 2025, 3 were found in a garden of a residence, identified as a species that tolerates cold more than others. Although, since that moment, it has not been reported that they have established themselves permanently. James Cameron had no money when he wrote the script for Terminator and sold the rights for only $1, but with the condition that he had to direct it. With that agreement, he managed to convince the producers to finance the movie while keeping creative control. The success of the 1984 film ended up launching his career as one of the most important directors in Hollywood. The youngest person to reach the summit of Mount Everest is Jordan Romero from the United States, who achieved it in 2010 at 13 years old. The youngest woman to do it is the Nepali Mingkhipa Sherpa, who reached the summit at 15 years old in 2003. In 2007, a man in Bosnia faked his death to see how many people would attend his funeral. Only his mother went. The man, named Marko Markovic according to press reports, organized the fake funeral after publishing a notice of his own death in the local newspaper. When he saw the low attendance, he revealed the prank and commented ironically that at least his mother had shown up. When parts of the United States and Russia began to be used together in different space missions in the 1990s, it was discovered that the systems were compatible largely because the intelligence agency of the Soviet Union had secretly borrowed designs from the United States in previous decades. Joss Whedon, the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and director of The Avengers, co-wrote the script for Toy Story. During the development of the film, he helped refine the dialogue and better define the personalities of characters such as Buzz Lightyear and Mr. Potato Head. Although his work was not always publicly credited at the time, his contribution was recognized later. 20% of everything you eat is used to provide energy to the brain. Although the brain represents only a small fraction of body weight, it consumes a large amount of energy to keep neurons active and allow functions such as thinking, remembering, and controlling the body. Much of that energy comes from glucose circulating in the blood. Most mobile phones sold in Japan are waterproof because young Japanese women use them so much that they even take them into the bath. In the early 2000s, manufacturers began making them water-resistant because many users wanted to keep using their phones even in the bathtub. Over time, this feature became standard, and today, many Japanese models can withstand splashes or immersion. The longest commercial flight that can currently be taken is the Singapore-New York route. It is a little more than 9,300 miles, and depending on weather conditions, it lasts between 18 and 19 hours in the air. To achieve this flight, they use an Airbus aircraft optimized for long distances with reduced weight. Since 1991, there had been plans to make a movie of The Simpsons. The first idea for the script became the episode where Bart and Lisa go to Camp Krusty. That episode, titled Camp Krusty, was originally intended as the basis for a longer story, but the team decided to adapt it into a regular episode before the film project moved forward. When you get very scared, you turn pale because blood moves away from the skin. This helped humans in primitive times avoid bleeding to death when attacked by a wild animal. This effect occurs because the nervous system activates the fight or flight response, causing the blood vessels in the skin to contract and directing more blood to the muscles and vital organs. In Antigua and Barbuda, lizard soup is used as a cure for asthma, as long as the patient is not told what it is made from. This remedy is part of popular traditions in some Caribbean communities. Although there is no scientific evidence of its effectiveness, the belief has been passed down for generations as part of local traditional medicine. Fingerprints serve to amplify microscopic vibrations when we touch surfaces, which improves fine touch. This allows us to differentiate between textures such as silk, paper, plastic, or rock without looking. They also help with grip because they increase friction. Christopher Lee was the only member of the Lord of the Rings cast who had actually met J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer of the acclaimed novels. Lee had been a great admirer of the book since he was young and met the author in the 1950s. For years, he expressed his desire to participate in a film adaptation of the work. Accessing a memory usually takes your brain 0.0004 seconds. This process occurs thanks to complex networks of neurons that activate almost instantly in different parts of the brain, especially in the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex, key regions for storing and retrieving memories. Half of all the pepper in the world is produced in Vietnam. The country became the world's main producer thanks to its tropical climate and large areas dedicated to cultivation. Much of that production is exported to international markets, where pepper is one of the most widely used spices. Years before becoming Falcon and later Captain America, the actor Anthony Mackie had his first role in the movie 8 Mile as Eminem's rival in the final rap battle, a character named Papa Doc. In an interview, this actor mentioned that some things Eminem says about him in the battle to mock him are real facts from his life, such as the school he attended and his family situation. According to analysts of Academy Award acceptance speeches, Steven Spielberg has been thanked more times when someone receives an Oscar than God. The director has been a central figure in Hollywood since the 1970s and has produced or directed many influential films. That is why his name frequently appears in the acknowledgments of winners who worked with him. The largest gathering of people with the same name took place in Dubai in 2005, when more than 1,000 people named Mohammed came together. The event was organized as part of a promotional campaign and brought together people with different variations of the same name, which is very common in the Muslim world. The gathering was recognized by Guinness World Records as the largest meeting of people with the same name. By the year 2020, the number of Chinese men of marriageable age will exceed the number of women in the same situation by 30 million. This imbalance is partly related to decades of cultural preference for sons and the former one-child policy. Demographers have warned that this difference may have important social effects. The countries where the most cheese is consumed are Denmark, with approximately 62 pounds of cheese per person per year, Iceland, with approximately 61, Finland, with approximately 61, and France, with approximately 60. More cheese is consumed in European countries and colder countries in general. Although, if consumption by volume and not average per person is considered, the United States and China lead the list. The character Apollo Creed from the movie Rocky is based on Muhammad Ali. The fictional boxer shares with him the charismatic style, the confidence in front of the public, and the spectacular way of promoting his fights. Sylvester Stallone himself has mentioned that he was inspired by Ali's personality and fighting style when creating Rocky's original rival. In many countries, it is illegal to perform surgery on an octopus without using anesthesia. It is the only invertebrate that enjoys that privilege. This is because octopuses possess a very developed nervous system and have demonstrated complex behaviors, such as solving problems, opening containers, and using tools, which suggests that they can experience pain in a way similar to many vertebrates. Mexico City is the city with the most museums in the world, more than 160, and most are free on Sundays. Among them are some of the most important in Latin America, such as the National Museum of Anthropology and the Palace of Fine Arts. The tradition of free Sunday admission aims to encourage visits from students and families. The Super Bowl halftime show, as it is known today, with major popular music stars such as Bad Bunny, began because the comedy program In Living Color broadcast a special in 1992 during halftime, stealing millions of viewers from the broadcast to another channel. Because of this, the following year, the NFL hired Michael Jackson, breaking all audience records. Before becoming an actor, Bruce Willis was a private investigator. During his youth, he worked various jobs while trying to break into acting, including positions as a security guard and bartender in New York. It was while working in bars in the city that he began connecting with the entertainment world and eventually got his first opportunities on television. There is a replica of Stonehenge made with cars painted gray in Nebraska, United States. The structure is called Carhenge and was built in 1987 by the artist Jim Reinders as a humorous interpretation of the prehistoric monument in England. To create it, he used dozens of old cars placed in positions similar to the original stones, and today it functions as an outdoor tourist attraction. Writing was independently invented in 3 places: the Middle East, China, and Central America. All other alphabets and writing systems are derived from or inspired by these 3, or they are incomplete. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform writing appeared more than 5,000 years ago. In China, the first characters appeared during the Shang dynasty, and in Mesoamerica, civilizations such as the Maya developed complex hieroglyphic systems used to record history, rituals, and astronomy. There is a musical piece called Circus Galop that is impossible for a human to play. It was written specifically as a performance test for player pianos or mechanical pianos. Due to its design, it can require up to 21 simultaneous notes. It would even be almost impossible for 4 people playing the same piano at the same time. Yoda, the Star Wars character, was created based partly on the appearance of Albert Einstein. Designer Stuart Freeborn, who created the original puppet, was partially inspired by the famous scientist's facial features to give the character a look of wisdom and old age. He also incorporated some traits from his own face, which explains part of the unique expression of the Jedi Master. To recreate the Lego Movie in real life, you would need more than 15 million pieces. The animation for this movie was made entirely with digital effects. The animators designed every element to look as if it were built with real blocks, including imperfections, scratches, and slightly misaligned pieces, with the goal that the result would feel as if it had been filmed with physical toys. When Trey Parker was asked about the ending of South Park, he answered, "We have been waiting to be canceled for 18 damn years." The series premiered in 1997, and since then has been known for its provocative humor. Despite the controversies, it has become one of the longest-running animated comedies on television. The wrestler John Cena holds the record for the most WWE titles so far. Before becoming an actor, he released a rap album in 2005 titled You Can't See Me. He is also the individual who has granted the greatest number of wishes for sick children through the organization Make-A-Wish, with more than 650. Harrison Ford suggested to George Lucas that Han Solo should sacrifice his life to save his friends in Return of the Jedi, but as we know, that never happened. Ford believed the character would have had a stronger ending with a final heroic act. Lucas decided to keep him alive because the movie was aiming for a more optimistic tone, and also because the character was one of the audience's favorites. In 1933, Mickey Mouse received 800,000 letters from his fans. The character had become a worldwide sensation only a few years after his debut in sound animation, and Walt Disney Studios had to create special departments to handle the enormous volume of correspondence arriving from different countries. The Academy refused to nominate the 1982 movie Tron for the Visual Effects Award because they said it was cheating by using computers. At that time, the use of computer-generated graphics was something completely new in cinema. Over time, that technology became standard, and today, it dominates most visual effects in Hollywood. There is only one country in the world that does not have a capital. It is Nauru, an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with fewer than 13,000 inhabitants. Even though its administrative offices are located in the district of Yaren, the country's constitution does not indicate that it has a capital. The country is one of the smallest on the planet, and during much of the 20th century, its economy depended almost entirely on phosphate mining, a resource that briefly made it one of the countries with the highest income per person. While recording the voice of the genie in Aladdin, Robin Williams frequently received calls from Steven Spielberg, who was working on Schindler's List. He would put the call on speaker so Williams could tell jokes to the cast and cheer them up a little. Spielberg later explained that the atmosphere on set was very heavy because of the film's subject, and that those brief humorous calls helped the team relieve emotional tension. We use 72 muscles working together in order to speak. These muscles control very precise movements of the tongue, lips, jaw, larynx, and diaphragm. Thanks to this coordination, human beings can produce an enormous variety of sounds and form complex words in different languages. A World of Warcraft player named Bradster has 36 accounts and attacks himself on 11 computers to level up. This type of practice is known among players as multiboxing, where one person controls several characters at the same time. Some use programs or special keyboards to synchronize actions and advance faster within the game. For years, Nicholas Copernicus avoided publishing the heliocentric theory out of fear of being ridiculed by academics of the time. His real purpose was to explain oddities such as the retrograde motion of Mars in a mathematical way, not as a philosophical or religious stance to remove the Earth from the center of the universe. It was not taken seriously until Kepler and Galileo revisited it. Manuel de Oliveira was the oldest active film director in the world until before his death in 2015. His first movies date back to the silent film era. Born in 1908 in Portugal, he continued directing movies even after turning 100 years old. His final work premiered when he was more than 105 years old, making him a unique figure in the history of cinema. The ancient Persian language has 80 different words that mean love. This is because the language distinguishes between many types of affection and emotions, from romantic and passionate love to family affection, deep friendship, or spiritual love. This richness of terms reflects the cultural and literary importance of love in classical Persian poetry. On September 28, 2006, the city of Reykjavik and its surrounding areas in Iceland turned off all public lighting for half an hour, while an astronomer talked about the stars and constellations on the radio. The initiative aimed to allow residents to observe the night sky with less light pollution. During those minutes, many people went outside to look at constellations and learn to identify them. The Coca-Cola Freestyle vending machine can mix more than 165 combinations of drinks instantly. It achieves this with a micro-dispensing system derived from technology used for precise medication dosing that mixes the concentrates contained in individual cartridges. It also sends real-time data to Coca-Cola to know which mixes consumers choose the most. The creators of the movie Beverly Hills Cop invented a technology called Satellite Location System. Years later, it actually became real, the common GPS. In the film, the device is mentioned as an advanced way to track vehicles from space. In real life, the Global Positioning System was developed by the United States military and began becoming available for civilian use during the 1990s. When a coal mine catches fire, it can burn for years. There are thousands of these fires happening right now. Some can continue for decades underground because the coal keeps feeding the fire slowly. These fires release polluting gases and are very difficult to extinguish due to the depth and extent of the tunnels. More than 80% of the films made before 1929 are lost due to the passage of time. No copies exist. Many were recorded on nitrate film, a very flammable material that also deteriorates with the years. Fires, neglect, and the lack of interest in preserving cinema during its early years caused the disappearance of thousands of works from the silent film era. The scientist and inventor Nikola Tesla was obsessed with the number 3. He liked to walk around the block 3 times before entering any building and demanded that the number of the hotel room where he stayed be divisible by 3. He also had other habits related to numbers, such as always using a stack of napkins to clean his utensils before eating, something that some biographers have interpreted as possible obsessive-compulsive behaviors. There is a traditional Japanese pastime called dorodango, in which you must take some soil and polish it until it forms a shiny sphere. It is more difficult than it seems because the soil must have a good combination of sand and clay. It can also break at any moment if it is not handled properly. Marco Hort holds the world record for putting the largest number of straws in his mouth at once. He placed 264. He achieved this mark during an event organized by Guinness World Records, using flexible straws that he carefully arranged between his lips and teeth without breaking them. The attempt took several minutes of preparation to arrange them all correctly. The first athlete disqualified from the Olympic Games for using banned substances was Hans Gunnar Liljenvall of Sweden in 1968. In Mexico, he had drunk 2 beers to calm his nerves before starting the shooting competition. In 1998, Sony accidentally sold 700,000 video cameras with technology that allowed people to see through clothing. The model had lenses that used infrared light that made it possible to see through certain types of clothing. More than 1/3 of the airports in the world are in the United States. This is partly due to the enormous size of the country and the large number of domestic flights. Many small cities have regional airports, making the United States air network one of the densest on the planet. About 8% of the human genome is made up of remnants of viruses. Most are inactive, but there are others that contribute to the proper functioning of the body. This is called horizontal gene transfer, when genetic information that does not come from the parents is incorporated into an organism. Jurassic Park, Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, and The Shawshank Redemption were in theaters at the same time in October 1994. That year is considered one of the strongest in the history of modern cinema. All 4 movies eventually became highly influential classics, and, over time, 3 of them were included in the United States National Film Registry because of their cultural importance. An American television network used recorded bird sounds during golf tournaments. They stopped doing it when an expert bird watcher realized that they had played the sound of a bird species that was not native to the area where the tournament was taking place. A disposable battery will have lost 25% of its power in 1 year, even if it has not been taken out of its packaging. This phenomenon is known as self-discharge and occurs due to internal chemical reactions that continue slowly even when the battery is not in use, gradually reducing its capacity over time. Salvador Dalí was extremely afraid of grasshoppers for some reason. The artist himself said that the fear began in his childhood after some children threw one in his face. The phobia was so intense that he even avoided illustrations or images of the insect, and in some of his surrealist works, disturbing representations of them appear. The buckets from the Lego Creator line used to have an age limit of 4 to 99 years due to the risk of playing with small pieces for younger children. However, the 99 limit was added for marketing purposes, leaving out more than 600,000 centenarians that exist approximately in the world. In the other types of Lego sets, they only put the smaller number and a plus sign. The DVD of Finding Nemo is the best-selling DVD of all time. It sold more than 40 million copies. The enormous success of the release occurred shortly after the film premiered in theaters in 2003. For years, it was an essential title in many home collections and helped establish the DVD format as the main way to watch movies at home. At the Maruyama Zoo in Japan, they tried to breed 2 hyenas from 2010 to 2014 until they realized that both were males. The mistake happened because in spotted hyenas, distinguishing the gender is complicated. Females have an external organ very similar to that of males, which can confuse even experienced caretakers. Any member of the French Foreign Legion wounded while defending France can immediately apply to receive French nationality, since he would be French by spilled blood. This principle is known as French by spilled blood and has been part of the Legion's tradition for a long time. Many foreign soldiers have obtained citizenship after being wounded in combat. The budget of the movie Paranormal Activity was $15,000, but it ended up earning more than $190 million. Most of the money was used for basic recording equipment and very simple effects. Its enormous success showed that an effective story and word of mouth could turn an independent production into a worldwide horror film phenomenon. Jason Lewis was the first person to cross planet Earth without using engines or sails. He walked and traveled using all kinds of non-motorized transport across all types of terrain. It took him 13 years to complete his journey. His expedition, known as Expedition 360, began in 1994 and crossed continents and oceans using methods such as bicycles, roller skates, kayaks, and pedal-powered watercraft. There is a mountain in Australia called Mount Disappointment. It was given that name because the first explorers who climbed to the top realized the view was not very good and wanted to reflect their feelings in the name. The style derived from the futuristic architecture of the space race and atomic era is called Googie. This name was born when, in 1952, an architecture critic stopped his car to point at a futuristic cafe called Googie's in Los Angeles and proclaimed that this look was something new. The phrase remained to name this style. This is Spinal Tap is the only movie on IMDb that can be rated up to 11 stars. This comes from the joke where the band's guitarist shows that his amplifiers go up to volume 11. The joke became so famous that the expression, "turn it up to 11, is now used to describe something pushed to the maximum. A Norwegian student spent $27 on bitcoins and forgot about them. A few years later, he realized their value had risen to $886,000. The story happened around 2013, when the young man checked an old purchase made in 2009 while researching cryptocurrencies for a project. With the money, he was able to buy an apartment in Oslo and still keep some bitcoins. There was a television music program in Italy in the 1970s called The 1001 Lights, where contestants competed by singing, and to decide the winner, viewers had to turn on all the lights in their house. From that, they could observe the variations in electricity consumption provided by the National Energy Company. O.J. Simpson was going to be the lead actor in Terminator, but the studio became convinced that no one could see him as a killer. Ironies of life. The role finally went to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who transformed the character into one of the most iconic villains in science fiction cinema since its release in 1984. More than 25% of the world's natural gas reserves are located in Russia, in case you were wondering. This energy resource has been for decades a key part of its economy and geopolitical influence, especially in Europe, where many countries have historically depended on Russian gas exports to cover part of their energy consumption. Anonymous sent thousands of completely black faxes to the Church of Scientology so they would run out of all their ink cartridges. This action occurred during online protests against the organization in the late 2000s. The idea was to saturate their fax machines and cause them expenses in paper and ink. Chili peppers arrived in Thailand in the 16th century thanks to Portuguese traders as botanical stowaways of the Columbian Exchange. In a few years, they displaced more expensive local species and became so integrated into the cuisine that they are now part of the country's culinary identity. In one of the ruins in Indiana Jones' Raiders of the Lost Ark, you can see drawings of C-3PO and R2-D2. The detail appears carved into a wall inside the Well of Souls. It was included as a small wink between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, who used to hide Star Wars references in some of their productions. Cat originally meant dog. The word comes from the Latin catulus, which means small dog or puppy. Over time, the term evolved in different Romance languages until it became associated with domestic felines. Related words such as kitten in English or gatto in Italian also have roots linked to that ancient term. The snow-covered maze in The Shining was actually built on a set without air conditioning, and it was very hot inside. To create the appearance of snow, they used materials such as foam, salt, and special movie dust. During filming, the studio lights raised the temperature significantly, so the actors had to perform wearing heavy coats while they were actually sweating. The dodo bird became extinct, or rather, we drove it to extinction, only 80 years after it was discovered. This flightless bird lived on the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean and disappeared in the 17th century after the arrival of humans, who introduced invasive animals and hunted the species quickly. The largest crocodile in the world and the smallest man in the world are from the same island in the Philippines. The crocodile Lolong, captured on the island of Mindanao, measured more than approximately 20 feet and was considered the largest in captivity. The smallest recorded man, Junrei Balawing, was also born on that same island. During a scene in the Disney movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame, it is possible to see in the background, walking through the city, Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Both stories take place in France. This small cameo briefly appears in a scene of the Paris market and is one of the many nods that Disney animators used to include as internal jokes, hiding characters from other movies within the background of certain scenes. Filming The Hunger Games: Catching Fire caused Jennifer Lawrence to become temporarily deaf in one ear. The problem occurred during an action scene in the water when a powerful jet of water struck her ear. The pressure damaged her eardrum for a while, and she had to continue filming with that discomfort for several weeks. Facebook gives its employees 4 months of paid leave when their children are born. This parental leave policy applies to both mothers and fathers and is part of the employment benefits that many technology companies have adopted to attract and retain talent in the industry. In 2004, a man in New York named Matthew Jones was arrested for doing nothing. A police officer stopped him for disorderly conduct because people had to walk around him to pass. The man stated that he was just standing there. If inflation is taken into account, the highest-grossing movie of all time is the 1939 drama Gone with the Wind. Its original release attracted enormous audiences during years of theatrical re-releases. Adjusted to the current value of money, its box office revenue greatly surpasses most modern blockbusters. Planet Earth is traveling through space at approximately 67,000 miles per hour. This speed corresponds to the movement of the Earth around the Sun while completing one orbit each year. At the same time, the entire solar system is also moving around the center of the galaxy at an even greater speed, which means we are actually traveling through space much faster than it seems. It has been observed that some ducks stay floating in the sections where the water flows fastest in rivers, and when they reach the end, they go back to repeat the trip. Biologists believe this behavior may be a form of animal play. The ducks use the current like a small natural slide and repeat the ride several times. Trees contribute to creating the oxygen we breathe, but in reality, it is only a small percentage. Most of the fresh air on Earth is generated in the oceans by microorganisms such as plankton, different algae, and any other organism whose cells feed through photosynthesis. The 1999 to 2000 hunting season was the worst for hunters because the forests filled with enthusiastic fans of the movie The Blair Witch Project. Many people visited the forests of Maryland to search for clues related to the story of the film. The large number of visitors even forced local authorities to monitor some areas. In Finland, there are 187,888 lakes. Because of this enormous number of bodies of water, the country is known as the Land of 1,000 Lakes. Many of them were formed at the end of the last ice age when the retreat of glaciers left thousands of depressions in the terrain that filled with water. When Matt LeBlanc auditioned for the role of Joey on the series Friends, he had only $11. In the final season, his salary was $1 million per episode. The success of the series turned the entire main cast into some of the highest-paid stars on television, and the character of Joey ended up being one of the most popular during the 10 seasons. Making the movie Titanic cost more than building the real ship itself. The 1997 film had a budget close to $200 million. Adjusted for inflation, building the original Titanic in 1912 would have cost less than producing the movie. The singer Lana Del Rey said that feminism is not an interesting concept for her. It is even boring. She said she is more interested in things like the growth of SpaceX and Tesla and what will happen with our intergalactic possibilities. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, was the first owner of the phone number 888-88888. But he got tired of it when he started receiving more than 100 wrong calls a day. Most of them were babies playing with phones. According to research published in 2021, a total of 2,500,000,000 Tyrannosaurus rex existed on Earth throughout 127,000 generations. They lived for around 2.5 million years during the end of the Cretaceous. That means there were an average of 20,000 alive at the same time. The probability that they were preserved as fossils was very low. In Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, when there are shots of an asteroid field, you can see strange objects flying among the space rocks like a shoe or a potato. The special effects artists used everyday objects painted and filmed up close to create the asteroids, since it was cheaper and faster than building complex models. In the Caribbean, there are oysters that can climb trees. But it is all an illusion. In reality, they get stuck in the trees when the currents are very high, making it seem as if they have those powers. This phenomenon is often seen in mangroves, where high tides can carry oysters and other mollusks up to the roots and trunks of trees. Some parts of Antarctica have not had snow or rain for more than 2 million years. These areas are known as the McMurdo Dry Valleys and are among the driest places on the planet. The extreme conditions of cold and wind prevent moisture from accumulating and forming precipitation. Dinosaurs lived on planet Earth for 150 million years. In comparison, we have only existed for 0.1% of that time. The first dinosaurs appeared approximately 230 million years ago and dominated the Earth until their extinction 66 million years ago, after the impact of a large asteroid. In contrast, Homo sapiens has existed for around 300,000 years. Eskimos use refrigerators to prevent their food and drinks from freezing. In Arctic regions, outside temperatures can be so low that food freezes easily. That is why people sometimes use ordinary refrigerators as a kind of insulated box that keeps products at a slightly higher temperature and prevents them from becoming completely solid. Lake Michigan is so clear that ships that sank there can be seen from space. In some areas, the water is very transparent, and the remains of old shipwrecks can be observed from the air or through aerial photographs, since the lake has preserved many sunken ships because of its low temperatures. Lincoln Cathedral in England was the tallest structure in the world for 249 years. It reached that position after its central tower was completed in the 14th century. It even surpassed the Great Pyramid of Giza in height until the cathedral's spire collapsed during a storm in the 16th century. More paper is used in Japan for manga, which are Japanese comics, than for toilet paper. For decades, weekly and monthly manga magazines have had enormous print runs, sometimes millions of copies per edition. Many of them are printed on inexpensive, thick paper because they are meant to be read quickly and then recycled. For many years, Valentine's Day was banned in Saudi Arabia, and stores could not sell red roses or items related to the celebration. However, since around 2018, the authorities relaxed the restrictions, and today the date is openly celebrated in many parts of the country. Bambi Meets Godzilla is a short animated film considered a classic. It is number 38 on the list of the greatest cartoons of all time. The short lasts only about a minute and shows Bambi walking peacefully through the forest before encountering Godzilla in an unexpected twist that mixes humor and surprise. In 1996, David Bowie released the single Telling Lies, which was the first song by a well-known artist to be available exclusively for online download. With the internet speeds of that time, it could take up to 15 minutes to download. In ancient Greek, ostrich is called strauthocamelos, or sparrow camel. The name combines the words strauthos, meaning sparrow or small bird, and camelos, meaning camel. The ancient Greeks believed the animal had characteristics of both: the large, strong body of a camel and the bird form of a giant sparrow. Siamese cats are actually completely cream-colored, but as they grow, the colder parts of their bodies darken due to an enzyme in their fur that activates with heat. That is why areas such as the ears, face, paws, and tail become darker, while the rest of the body remains lighter. Even the temperature of the environment can influence how pronounced their color pattern appears. It is genetically impossible for a rose to be blue. Natural roses do not possess the gene necessary to produce the pigments called delphinidin, responsible for blue tones in many flowers. That is why for centuries, gardeners tried unsuccessfully to obtain one. In the 21st century, scientists managed to create bluish roses through genetic engineering, although their color is still closer to violet. Humans have been hunters and gatherers for 99% of our existence. Agriculture began only about 10 or 12,000 years ago, while modern humans have existed for approximately 300,000 years. For most of that time, communities lived from hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.